Anyways, not your Congress, though. Your elected representatives in Congress are in the middle of their August recess, which actually started early. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson said, just go home early. We have to do everything that we can at all costs to avoid addressing the Epstein cover-up. Now, August recess is not meant to be a vacation. During August recess, we're told that members of Congress are supposed to go back to their districts and do the work of the people, hold town halls, question and answer sessions. But as we all know, most of them just go on vacation. Probably to some pedophile island somewhere. Or in the case of Mike Johnson and a few others, rather than a pedophile island, why settle for pedophile island when you could have an entire pedophile country? That's where Speaker of the House Mike Johnson is right now, putting on his tiny hat, humping the wall, being a good little goy for his Yiddish bosses. And he's not there by himself or just with his family. No, he is there with an AIPAC-funded delegation that flew over to the most depraved nation state on earth to get their marching orders, to participate in Jewish humiliation and domination rituals like Mike Johnson did at the Western Wall, which, by the way, we should address the so-called Wailing Wall. It wasn't part of the first or the second temple, as the Jews and Mike Johnson would have you believe. No, it was part of a Roman fortress. So just like the nation state of Israel itself, the story of the Western Wall, the so-called Wailing Wall, is fake. But that won't stop Mike Johnson. Take a look.
Mike Johnson, the 56th Speaker of the House of Representatives in America. We're here with a delegation of members of the House. We're so grateful to be in Israel, particularly on this day, recognizing the destruction of the two temples and two times in history. But it is such a moving time for us to be here at the Wailing Wall. We've offered our prayers. We put our notes into the wall as just traditional. And we're so moved by the hospitality of the people and the great love of Israel. Our prayer is that America will always stand with Israel, and that we will we pray for the preservation and the peace of Jerusalem. That's what Scripture tells us to do. It's a matter of faith for us and a commitment that we have. God bless you.
What a pathetic little weasel that guy is. That guy shut down your nation's entire Congress to protect pedophiles and then flew across the world to participate in Jewish religious rituals. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, the so-called evangelical Christian that grovels to the Jew while they slaughter children and other innocent civilians by the tens of thousands. You know, every single day, desperate and starving Palestinian children are being killed when they show up to aid sites in search of food, in search of what little food the Jew will still allow into Gaza. They are starving these people to death. We've talked about what your body does when it starves to death. They're starving these children. They're bombing an entire nation of people into oblivion while members of Congress smile for the cameras with their Israeli masters. Those are the people that your so-called elected representatives worship. The people who Mike Johnson and all of the other fake Christians at every level of this United States government fly around the world to see and to serve and to submit to. A tribe of genocidal, child-killing maniacs and pedophiles who proudly call for the torture and starvation and mass murder of children. And of course, it's not just Israeli officials that do this. It's American officials as well. If you can even call these people American, which you can't. People like Randy Fine, the disgustingly hideous, morbidly obese Jew from Florida who's also on this AIPAC-sponsored trip to Israel right now alongside Mike Johnson and all of the other traitors. Randy Fine routinely logs on to X or goes on Fox News and calls for the mass slaughter of Palestinian children and babies. Now he's calling for nuclear war in the name of Israel. And the GOP is just eating it up.
We nuked the Japanese twice in order to get unconditional surrender. That needs to be the same here. There is something deeply, deeply wrong with this culture, and it needs to be defeated.
Yeah, there is. There's something deeply wrong with this culture and with these people. Not the Palestinians, the Jew. There's something deeply wrong with these psychotic, self-absorbed killing machines who think that they were chosen by God to torment and subjugate all of humanity. And there's something deeply wrong with all of the fake Christians who devote their lives to serving these people. But you know, right now, something really interesting is happening because as the United States government doubles and triples down on its devotion to Israel, other Western nations are doing the exact opposite, or at least they appear to be. Over the past several days, something else to celebrate over the weekend, other than it's really fun to be white, topping the charts in 4 different categories, is this. It's been reported that France and Malta and the United Kingdom and Canada are all at the verge of recognizing Palestinian statehood. So at this point, America is starting to look like an international pariah state when it comes to this issue. Nearly 150 of the 193 nation member states recognize Palestine. That's a supermajority. And that number is now about to grow. America, no matter what your television tells you, is completely out of step with the rest of the world on this issue. And that's because of the infinitely powerful Jewish lobby that has this government by the balls. The Jewish lobby that installs Jewish subversives like Randy Fein's and quasi-homosexual Shabbos goys like Mike Johnson. The Jewish lobby that blew the brains out of the last American president who stood up to them. And they haven't just subverted our government, they've subverted our religious institutions, as you all know, with the help of fake Christians like Mike Johnson. You all heard him just a few minutes ago in that video. He says that God, thousands of years ago, commanded Christians to stand with a nation state founded in 1948. How do you reconcile that? Just imagine the amount of mental gymnastics you have to perform, the amount of hoops that you have to force your brain to jump through to be able to say that with a straight face. But these people don't care about keeping a straight face because they expect you to lap up every word that they say. Although now that's happening less and less. American support for Israel is at an all-time low. According to a recent Gallup poll, just 32% of American adults support Israel's war in Gaza. That's the lowest that it's been since the war began. But can you imagine being one of those 32%? And if that's the number, by the way, that's being released, just imagine what the real number is. It's even lower. The American people are tired of this. The American people are disgusted at the sight of innocent civilians, innocent children being starved and slaughtered in our name and with our weapons by a Jewish Talmudic regime propped up by our money. But at the rate things are going, it doesn't seem to matter if the American people like it or not, because whoever you elect will just keep the blood flowing. Trump was supposed to be the peace president. Instead, he's the genocide president, and right now his fellow Israel First politicians are in their motherland humping the wall and pledging even more American support. Richard Grove has had some really interesting thoughts on Mike Johnson and all kinds of other things. He is the host of Grand Theft World. We sat down with Richard Grove for about an hour. That conversation is available at stewpeters.tv. Here's part of what was said.
The jig is up. October 7th has been used over and over and over and over again, way too many times to justify what's going on. And it got people to start looking into the history to say, this didn't start in 1948 and it didn't start in 1917. This plan of expulsion of the native people of Palestine, which used to be under the Turkish Sultan, by the way, it was part of the Ottoman Empire. The only way they can have world domination is to bring America back into the British Empire, but the British Empire can't do it without the international banking. So you have a Anglo-American Israeli establishment that has been running roughshod on America since 1948. It's something that people now are willing to look at because it's so grandiose, the scale of devastation, annihilation. It's not decimation. That means you take out 1 out of every 10. I mean, they're really scaling up total wiping Palestine off the map, washing Gaza off the map. I mean, this has always been historical from the founding of Israel, that they would raise a level of town and then they would rename it with their branding. It's a whole bunch of territories that they want to gain. It's southern Lebanon, it's parts of Jordan, it's parts of Egypt. I mean, Gaza itself was stolen from Egypt in 1967 during the 6 Days War. So those people have literally been kept in a prison camp since 1967. And, the whole disingenuous nature of the official narrative of 10/7 was that these people like broke into Israel and attacked it. It's like, these are people in a prison who broke out and attacked their prison guards. They don't want to look into Israeli funding of Hamas as a convenient other that they can use as a proxy that they just can't negotiate with. So they're going to have to destroy the whole place. I mean, they showed various military operations since 2001, since 9/11. You've had 2008, you had the Goldstone report come out and say all this death and devastation is so unhumanitarian. They've been accused of war crimes. I mean, since they took over like the West Bank, they're not supposed to be having settlements there. Putting people in concentration camps is not an irony lost on me, given my study of World War I and World War II. The British developed concentration camps in South Africa. The guys who started Israel, the early Zionist founders, were big fans of Cecil Rhodes and his colonization efforts in South Africa for the British Empire. and they shared a lot of ideas back and forth. And there is a definite apartheid that has taken place, a separation of the people artificially based on racial boundaries, based on people who are there indigenously. If you're an indigenous Jew, Christian, or Muslim from that area, you're still not a Zionist, because you have to have moved from Europe to colonize. It was a colonization effort. It was called the Palestine Colonization Exploration Fund back in the day. They raised money with bonds. There's a whole bunch of history to it. But the international banking families from France and Britain that participated in the planning, colonization, kibbutzing, and eventual creation of Israel and the Knesset, that's a history that's not mentioned. You could start with 1829. There's a Niles Weekly Register. It was a newspaper in America. And it says that Lord Rothschild has done a deal with the Turkish Sultan to purchase all of Palestine.
That's
Now,
right.
I'm not claiming that's true. I'm claiming it's a fact that that article exists and the claim was made back then. And then if you go to 1833, 1835, there's more of these claims, eventually to the point where you have Lord Shaftesbury in Britain call for the restoration of the Jews to Palestine in 1841. And then from there, you've got a couple years that go by where there's some planning behind the scenes. And by 1861, there's a father of utopian socialism. His name's Moses Hess. And he writes a book in 1861, 1862, it's published, called Rome and Jerusalem, The Last Nationalist Question. In that book, he details with names, places, dates, they have infiltrated the Freemasonic lodges in Europe. They have used them for their purposes to fuse all the historical cults into one. Like, these are verbatim phrases he uses throughout the book. He names Moses Montefiore, Lord Rothschild, a whole bunch of people that will help their endeavor to grow into taking and colonizing Palestine. And that sets the tone for Theodor Herzl 20 years later to write Der Judenstaat, the Jewish state. So Herzl was like an unemployed dude who was looking for, he's looking for a sugar daddy. And he wrote some material that was useful to some people that were very powerful and had plans. And they needed those plans to eventually coalesce with the goals of the British Empire and a bunch of secret societies over which they had influence. So, the highest levels of Freemasonry from the Western perspective are just the early initiatory levels to Kabbalah from the Eastern perspective.
What is the benchmark for success? The total overarching overall goal, stated or unstated, of this strange people?
Well, I mean, it's power and world domination. It's not money, because they print money from thin air. The trillion plus, 40 trillion at this point that we owe to whoever owns the Federal Reserve.
That's a fake number, but yes.
Right. But that's the same
Yeah.
group of people that created their own nation state with stolen nuclear weapons. It's like, they play Americans like a fiddle because people here don't read and they don't have a sense of history and they don't have a sense of, I need to understand. They want to feel informed. You cannot be informed unless you start thinking, asking questions, asking for verifications, looking at the evidence for yourself, discovering the artifacts, learning how to use your quantum computer to defend yourself intellectually. Intellectual self-defense is what people need, because it's the power of assumption that controls most of the people on this planet. They hear words that are convincing and then they parrot those words, and they don't need MK Ultra when they have that. They need MK Ultra for when people start waking up. Totalitarian tyranny branded technocracy. There's some alliteration for your audience. It's technocracy, control through technology, ones and zeros, digital surveillance, giving them Elysium-like power and a gap between the people they're ruling over. When you think you're chosen by God and you got a book that tells you that you're special people and everyone else is animals, like that's a cruel and unusual situation to be born into in the first place. And that's a form of control right there. Literacy is a form of slavery until a consistent method of objective critical thinking is practiced by the reader. So anything that you read that's not true and you believe it to be true, you're being taken to the bank from age like kindergarten, right? Now you've got adults who have believed everything they read, didn't think about it critically, didn't challenge authority, and they are the ones servicing the people who really think they're God.
You're